My name is Reverend Vaughan Amaré, and I am here with Reverend Michael Amaré at Northern Light Spiritual Center. We are a community of people dedicated to using spiritual and practical principles to create lives we want to live. Northern Light Spiritual Center offers practical and spiritual tools to make positive changes in our lives. Please join me for our opening song, In This Very Room, by Ron and Carol Harris. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough peace and quite enough power to walk through our every fear. For Spirit, sweet Spirit, is in this very room. In this very room.
Good morning. This is the time we set aside each Sunday to center ourselves and for me to become at peace with myself. And so I just invite everybody to find a spot that is comfortable as you can possibly get. You may have to wiggle around in your chair or stand or whatever it may do. There's that sweet spot for our body to rest in. And so I invite us to start off by taking a nice few deep breaths in, deep, cleansing, refreshing, reinvigorating breaths that feed our body. So big deep breath in and release. One more breath in and release. And one more time, breath in and release. During today's service, we'll be focusing on the imagination. The imagination is a wonderful thing. We can imagine so many things, good and not so good sometimes. But this morning, during this meditation, I'm just inviting us to tap into that part of our imagination that triggers joy and happiness. Just imagine what gives you the greatest joy in life, or maybe just in this moment. And as you're remembering this trigger of joy, how does it make your body feel? And where in your body do you feel this joy, this happiness? Because we can imagine so many things. Imagining that love of the divine cradling and holding us in its arms. Just cradling and holding us in that divine love. The divine love that we were created in, the divine love that we are expressing each and every day. For we are that expression of that divine love. Just imagine the laughter of a baby. That uninhibited laughter. It's contagious. The joy of watching a cat or a puppy chase its tail over and over and over and over again. Just little things in life that we can tap into each and every day. That we can tap into to step out of all of the angst and anxiety, to relieve ourselves, to release ourselves of all this stuff that we sometimes cling to. We are creative entities. We could not be creative if we did not have imagination. I just invite you to breathe in again and release. Knowing that each and every cell in your body is refreshed, that it's fed on each breath taken in. That as we release each breath, whatever we no longer need is expelled. So in this moment, I just invite you to wiggle your toes. When you're comfortable, come back to the room and open your eyes. And so it is. Today's reading is an article from Dr. James Davies. It's called What Imagination Is: Creativity or Mental Images. Imagination is one of those words that inspires us. It reminds us of children playing and Einstein claiming that it's more important than knowledge. The word gets used in a lot of ways, but for the most part, people mean one of two things. First, people use the word to refer to creativity in general, saying that someone has a great imagination or no imagination at all. Second, people use the word to refer to mental imagery of some kind, either picturing something in your head, like how your childhood bedroom looked, or hearing a song in your head to try to recall lyrics. I'm interested in both kinds of imagination, and my post will reflect that. Imagination is quite possibly a uniquely human ability. In essence, it allows us to explore ideas of things that are not in our present environment, or perhaps not even real. For example, one can imagine a cup of coffee seen the day before, or one can imagine an alien spaceship arriving in the Earth's orbit. The key is that what is imagined is generated from within rather than perceived based on input from without. In perception, one takes information from the outside world, such as light or sound waves, and finds meaning in it. Using memory and perceptual processes, in imagination, it works in reverse. Imagery is created from memory. This is perhaps clearest in dreaming, where our minds churn up an entire virtual reality for us to experience when we're asleep. But imagination is used in a whole variety of cognitive processes, including planning, hypothetical reasoning, picturing things in the past or the future, comprehending language, and of course, in design and creativity and engineering and the arts. What is not obvious is that this important, fascinating phenomenon can be explored scientifically. Even though we can't read images directly off of people's brains yet, there are still scientific means to find out what goes on in someone's head. And that's what the blog is about. This is your chance to learn about imagination from a scientific as well as an artistic perspective. How it works, what its limits are, as well as how you can use your imagination to be more creative and happy. And so it is.
Okay, Michael is going to pull up the words for this month's chant. I'll review them. If I travel at this breakneck pace, if I treat my life like a race, if I never stop to smell the flowers, if I'm filling up all my hours, I don't leave space for grace, I don't leave place to play, I don't have heart to start, to follow guidance from within, to pause and listen and begin. If I travel at this breakneck pace, if I treat my life like a race, if I never stop to smell the flowers, if I'm filling up all my hours, I don't leave space for grace, I don't leave place to play, I don't have heart to start, to follow guidance from within, to pause and listen and begin. Now you, if you travel at this breakneck pace, if you treat your life like a race, you don't leave space for grace, you don't leave place to play, you don't have heart to start, to follow guidance from within, to pause and listen and begin. Now we, if we travel at this breakneck pace, if we treat our lives like a race, if we never stop to smell the flowers, if we're filling up all our hours, we don't leave space for grace, we don't leave place to play, we don't have heart to start, follow guidance from within. Pause and listen and begin. Now we're going to turn it around. I travel at a slower pace. I treat my life as a grace. I do leave space. I stop to smell the flowers. I find time in all my hours. I do leave space for grace. I do leave place to play. I do have heart to start, to follow guidance from within. I pause and listen and begin. The song before the talk is Pure Imagination, which was originally presented in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it was sung by Gene Wilder.
Hold your breath. Make a wish. Count to 3. Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, dropping in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you wanna view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Wanna change the world? There's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with your imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
So I was listening for songs about imagination and inspiration, and I first saw the version from the movie with Gene Wilder singing it. The thing about it is, well, twofold. I want us to ground ourselves in not the fantasy of imagination, but the power of imagination. In the film, one of the things that's very interesting is that Gene Wilder had seen the sets with everything happening. But none of the other actors who were presented with this kingdom that he created had ever seen anything. So when they wander around the sets and are eating the different things that are at the set, it is their first reaction. They didn't know that this thing was full of marshmallow. They didn't know that if they break this, it would have a liquid jam inside. So part of the filmmaker's genius was to capture that surprise, to capture that sense of wonder of what we can see in life and what we don't expect to see in life. Two other versions of the song that I listened to were one with Barbra Streisand. Now you may think, well, why didn't I just go with Barbra Streisand? And what I was saying to Michael, and then there was Josh Groban, and why didn't I go with either one of them? The thing about both Barbra Streisand and Josh Groban, Barbra Streisand was employing the song in the context of kind of the natural disasters that the world is engaging in, and how do we imagine a better or different world. And one of the things about church is it's not supposed to be about overtly political, overtly oriented towards engaging in political action. I may speak about that from time to time, but I'm not supposed to direct people into particular directions. And Barbra Streisand's presentation is pretty directive. It's great. I like it a lot, and I don't want to be tying anybody into a particular value that I hold. With Josh Groban, it was more of an entertainment, and what I really liked about this one is there was no pause and there was no applause. There was simply the song and simply the presentation of transporting ourselves into our imagination. Now, what's the point of bringing up imagination today? One of the things that really inspired me last week when we were in Hawaii and Reverend Pamela Grace Beatty was speaking and doing the message, she had talked about stop putting off what it is that we want to do and just do it. Start the day with what it is that we're wanting. How different can our life be if we simply start doing what we want to be doing rather than saying, I'll get to that eventually. I have these other things that I have to do first. Who doesn't have other things that we always have to do first? Who doesn't have something that's pressing itself saying, pay attention to me. Pay attention to me now. And that can have us feeling very captive to the circumstance, very captive to the situation. The notion for this month is to pause for guidance. Why are we pausing for guidance? We're pausing for guidance so that we're better equipped to move forward in what we're doing. And the notion is that we are most successfully able to do that if we take time. There's a line in the second Matrix. How can you make time if you don't take time? By a character called the Merovingian. And I think that there's a power to that we just have to take out the time. The science of mind and heart and spirit urges us to make the infinite into something definite while staying open to something even better than what we can hold in mind and hold in heart. Through this teaching and through these practices, we can learn to consciously create through the universal mind. And we can consider our lists of wants, our needs, and our desires. But that may limit us. What if we expand our focus on infinite creation and the vastness of information of infinite creation, so that we open our minds to possibilities of things even bigger, adventures we had never imagined, loftier pursuits. Everyone is imbued with the power to duplicate the creative nature of living spirit through imagination. I'm going to say that again, and we'll come back to this. Everyone is imbued with the power to duplicate the creative nature of living spirit through imagination. So there's three things I want us to think about. Imagination is simply natural. We all have it. It's not endowed specially to this person, but not to this person. Everyone has this capacity. It is a part of life. It is a part of waking up and being. The second thing is that our feelings and thoughts can feed or starve our imagination. And the third thing is that imagination, when we operate from a calm and receptive place, is more easily sparked. So here's a little experiment. Imagine that you now have in your hand a lemon. You have a lemon and you hold it and you squeeze it a little bit, and now you put it on a counter in front of you, and you take a knife and you cut the knife and you use the knife and you cut that lemon in half, and you hold that half of the lemon and you squeeze it into your mouth. You squeeze the juice into your mouth. Now, I don't know about you, but I do know for me, simply saying those words, my mouth has gotten all kinds of saliva in it, because it's anticipating the sour taste of that lemon juice coming in. Our imagination is so powerful. It can change how our body is and moves and has its being in the world. Ernest Holmes described in his Science of Mind textbook, creation is the play of life upon itself through divine self-imagination. I'll say that again. Creation is the play of life upon itself through divine self-imagination. The divine is continually imagining and reimagining itself as us, as our growth in consciousness, as our acts of compassion, as our explorations of greater love, and our adventures into the unknown. Everyone has a fertile and vivid imagination. When our inner vision fills and flows with new thoughts, ideas, feelings, we spark imagination. It is our divine birthright that we imagine. One of the hallmarks of child development is engaging in imaginary play. And it's a hallmark in development that we may get the message, stop living in your imagination. How many of us have gotten messages, consciously driven or unconsciously delivered, about not getting taken up by your imagination, not letting your imagination have you run wild? Imagination is one of the most freeing activities. Can you imagine a school where the directions were just imagine? If we just imagine, then everybody isn't going to be doing the same thing at the same time. And it'd be very difficult for a teacher of 10, 15, 20, 30 people to be working with a group of people who are all doing their own thing. So school, how many times at work is there like this freedom? Just do whatever you imagine. Whatever you imagine is perfect. How often instead do we find ourselves being reined in? You're not doing it the way everybody else is. Don't you know that's not the way that this is done? Repeatedly, we have gotten directions to abandon our imagination. And I am using today as an opportunity to say, bring it back. Have reverence for that imagination. Don't fall under the directive to live differently. Now, Ernest Holmes also wrote, the creative power responds to feeling more quickly than any other mental attitude. So, as you may have noticed, or as I'm going to remind you to notice, feelings of agitation, anxiety, separation, disconnection, they all negate the spiritual truth of our being, leading us to imagine the worst possibilities. In fact, how much have we been trained to prepare for the worst? That you can't be ready if you don't imagine the worst possible outcome. Plan for the best, but prepare for the worst. That was one of the mantras with my ex-wife and her family when they would go sailing. That you would have to have the materials available so that if the worst thing happens, so you're on the sailboat and the sails are ripped. And the wind is not going to work on the sailboat. And you are stuck there. Or it's a windless day. So their sailboat had a engine that could act as a supplement. It wasn't primarily a motorboat, but it was a boat that had an engine because they were preparing for the worst. They were preparing that their boat could be stuck in the middle of a windless sea and you run out of food. Or there's no more ice left where the food is kept. We had a power outage the other night. It affected, I believe it affected Reba, it affected Michael and I. And apparently the notion was that the electric company had decided to shut down the power for a whole bunch of people because between 50 and 200 people had lost their power, so they thought, well, if we shut down the whole system, we'll be able to get it back up for those 50 to 200. That's not really planning for the best or planning for the worst. It's just not planning. We're just going to shut everything off. That'll make it so much easier. So instead of having up to 200 people upset, we'll have 2,000 families upset. How often do we fall back into that habit of planning for the worst? And I'm going to pull out my Bob Newhart impression. Bob Newhart played a psychiatrist in his first series called The Bob Newhart Show. And he had a woman come to him, and she said, Dr. Hartman, I think he was Dr. Hartman, I have this condition that I just can't leave the house. And every other person I've been to, it's, I've been working with people years and years and years, and nothing has happened. And Bob Newhart, as Dr. Hartman said, well, we can fix that. It's very easy. She said, what? It's very easy. Stop it. But, Dr. Hartman, don't you need to hear the details, the background? No, just stop it. Go out. Get out of your house. You're out of your house now. You can get out of your house again. Stop it. But don't you want to hear about how I feel when I'm out? No, I don't. I don't really care how you feel when you're out of your house. You just need to do it. Stop it. In that episode, Bob Newhart simply cuts to the quick. Stop it. Stop letting those directions to tie our imagination to the worst possible outcome. Just stop it. Now, one way to stop it is just pay attention when it happens. Here I am imagining the worst. It's very easy to do right now today. The Taliban has taken over the capital city of Afghanistan. And there's quite a lot of alarm because the many people, 20,000, have not been removed, or some have been removed and their families remain, and there's this huge threat. And I'm not going to say it's not easy to imagine the worst outcome. On the news today, they were talking about this is like Saigon all over again, but worse. What would happen if we were to spend some time imagining the best case scenario? What would happen if we were to put our energy towards that? People are saying, well, who's to blame? Is it the Biden administration for doing this thing and leaving? Is it the Trump administration for not planning with the former government? For actually leaving the former government out of the whole process? To be perfectly honest, the notion of blame, how helpful has blame ever been? Have you ever found blame really satisfying? It emotionally soothes us with our desire for revenge. It soothes us with our desire to make someone else wrong. But does it ever really fix anything? When we blame someone, do they suddenly come forward and say, you're right. I am a complete ass. I am the worst person in the world. Thank you for alerting me of my failures. Thank you for letting me know what a total loser I am. And your informing me about my loser status is going to completely turn me around and turn how I live in the world in a different way. My suspicion is that the blame game is really not a very successful game to play. If any of you have had a successful blame game episode, please tell me. Tell me about how your blaming that other person turned them around and made them into your best friend. How it made them that new person that you could confer with, and that person that you were close to, and that person with whom you shared a whole new relationship. It's easy to do. It's easy to get caught up in it. But what does it get us? Use our imagination to imagine something different than that. Okay, this person, it's not going to work working with this person. But what people can I imagine might I work with? Who might I turn to instead? going on now, the whole U.S. country was like poised to say, okay, COVID is over because the vaccine is here. Problem was that the COVID virus is smart and it mutates, and there's a particular mutation, the Delta variant. Now, Delta Airlines can't be fond of that, and it's just a sequence: the alpha, the beta, the gamma, the delta. It's just a sequence, and this is the one that was particularly icky. And yet there are some people in our country that are virulently anti-vaccine. Vaccines don't work. And there are some people in our country who are virulently anti-mask. You can't wear a mask. You shouldn't wear a mask. It's an impingement on my freedom, and it's an impingement on my body to wear a mask. We have to determine where and when we engage in an argument. Sometimes people are afraid of the vaccine because the medical system has not done right by some people. For those people, we have to respond in a different way than those people who are deliberately just ignorant. There are people who elect to be ignorant. You respond differently to deliberate ignorance and chosen ignorance versus fear of a history of bad outcomes. If we can't see differences, if we can't tolerate differences, then we can't find a way that responds. It's not very helpful to tell somebody who's electively ignorant anything about them because they're just not open to it. So it's like banging our heads against a wall. The third thing that I want to talk about is that imagination carries with it feeling and conviction, which means life and action. Imagination carries with it the capacity for life and action. When we see kids playing, they are engaged in action. They aren't just there thinking about what it is that they're going to do. They may think about it and then they do it. My sister and I had this weird little game when we were young. We had this game of war. And in the game of war, my sister would get with her friend and I would get with my friend, and we would pile up toys. And then we would throw the toys across the playroom, which was downstairs in the basement, which my mom didn't come down to. So I don't think my mom or dad ever realized that we were playing this game. And the way that we worked it out, the way that this war would work is that whichever team got hit first would get to decide the game that we would play. It wasn't about slaughtering the other team. It was about being careful. How do you dodge these toys that are coming at you? Because you really didn't want to get hit. At the same time, if you did get hit, there was the benefit of you were the one that got to choose what game the whole group would play. My husband is looking at this like, this is weird. This was part of how imagination showed up for my sister and me in our relationship. A calm and receptive consciousness sparks imagination. The more easily and frequently we calm, connect, refresh, awaken the flow, circulate our good and compassion, the more we feel in flow with spirit, and the more we constructively use our imagination, imagining something greater and more expansive creates a greater life. John Keats wrote, "I am certain of nothing but the holiness of the heart's affections and the truth of the imagination." So knowing all this, what do we do? What do we do knowing this? What is our life work for this week to riff on the processes and the practices that our practitioner Stephanie Scranton has people do? For a couple of years she called it homework. Now she's calling it life work. There are some specific things we can do to build on and work with our imagination. So, first thing we can do is make a date with ourselves this week to become quiet, still, calm, to refresh, and then let our imagination take us on some great adventure. Schedule a date with ourselves to imagine going on a great adventure. And when we're on this adventure, just pay attention to the feelings that are going on this adventure. And then include those strong feelings in our affirmations and our prayers, our treatments this week. So we notice that we feel greater freedom as the outcome of this imagined adventure. Then speak into freedom. There's one life, that life is God's life, that life is perfect and whole and free. And in this freedom that is acting, the divine has complete free way of expressing itself, of moving into and out of and through all creation. There is nothing that is withheld or restricted from this freedom that is operating powerfully. And this freedom, which is the divine in action, which is the divine expressing itself, which is the divine unfolding, which is the divine finding itself in new and expanded and extended ways, this freedom is my freedom. And I am able to move through my life in a way that expresses greater freedom, in a way that is expansive, in a way that opens doors that were closed to me before. I am this place where divine freedom is showing up. I am this means to which freedom makes itself known. I become an expression, an example, a means to which others see and are touched by freedom, and are guided by freedom, and are inspired by freedom. And my freedom is a contagion of freedom, of fullness, of greater expression, of being. And in this place of freedom, I find a fullness. I find a wholeness. I find a means continually open for me. I find doors. I find ways to be with things that I call problems, and I find myself settling into them in different ways. And as this is my truth that I have spoken in this treatment, as this is my truth, I give thanks. I give thanks that freedom has expressed. Freedom showed up in my imagination. Freedom showed up in me in my adventure. Freedom is my birthright. Freedom is the means through which spirit lives and moves and has its being. And in this place of gratitude, I release this word. I release this to the automatic action of the law, that aspect of the divine, which is always saying yes, which forever is affirming, which is forever fulfilling, which is forever satisfying, which is forever giving of itself, as an ultimate example of freedom. And I say, amen, and so it is. So this is just an example. Make that date with ourselves. Second thing we do. Notice each time that new thoughts, ideas, feelings, intuitions, inklings arise. Just pay attention to them. If we pause for guidance, that guidance may be coming from within. Spirit may be using us to express something that's never been expressed before. Just pay attention. How hard is that? I'm not asking you for some significant change. I'm just asking you to pay attention to any new thought, feeling, inkling. Pay attention. Third thing, every morning ask, what is Spirit's highest idea for me this day? And what is the feeling or quality of this high idea? What is Spirit's highest thought? So ask, set up the day for new thoughts and feelings. So not just look for them, but set the day up. Fancy that. Not only might we be paying attention to new thoughts and feelings and inklings and inspirations and imaginings, we can set ourselves up. Just how hard is it to wake up in the morning and say, what is Spirit's highest idea for me? And what feeling comes with that highest idea? Finally, the last thing I'm going to propose as a homework is, does my imagination run away from my highest good or towards my highest good? Is my imagination running away from my highest good or towards my highest good? And by just asking that question, we can then make some actions. We can decide, oh, I'm getting on that imagination train that's taking me away from where I want to be. How do I get on to where I want to be? So, 4 homeworks are make a date and imagine an adventure. And then pay attention to the feeling and then treat or affirm on that feeling. I am free. I am whole. I am complete. If your adventure brings you freedom, then I am free. I am whole. I am complete. If it brings you beauty, we can engage in the same process. Treat for beauty. Name ourselves as beauty. If it's wisdom, if it's wholeness, if it's life, if it's light, if it's truth, if it's good, whatever it is that's at the center of that adventure, affirm it and treat for it. Noticing those new thoughts, those new feelings, those new emotions, noticing them. That fuels and sparks the imagination. Asking, setting ourselves up with what is Spirit's highest idea for me? And last, is my imagination running away from my highest good or is it running towards my highest good? Just ask the question. So to conclude, I have a one-sentence affirmation, and I should have given it to Michael to put it up on the board so it would be easy to see, but I neglected to do that. But I have it here. So, my imagination grows. So come on with me. My imagination grows, my consciousness, and expands my life. It empowers me to duplicate the creative nature of living spirit. Okay, we did it one time. We can do it 2 more times. And I'm going to ask you to imagine that spirit is breathing life into you as we are saying this. My imagination grows my consciousness. My imagination grows my consciousness and expands my life. and expands my life. It empowers me. It empowers me to duplicate the creative nature, to duplicate the creative nature of living spirit. Of living spirit. And one last time for good measure. My imagination grows my consciousness. Grows my consciousness and expands my life.
And expands my life.
It empowers me
It empowers me
to duplicate the creative nature. To duplicate the creative nature of living spirit.
of living spirit.
And so it is.
So it is.
Thank you.
I want to thank Reverend Vaughan for one of the biggest things that I got out of his talk here was for encouraging and allowing us to bring back our imagination. Because I think sometimes we are told, not to use it, not to be that way. But now we have the permission to bring back that imagination. Because our imagination is it's a wonderful gift. And if we stifle it, then we stifle our creativity in life. So, thank you, Reverend Vaughan. And for always the forever, ever relatable Bob Newhart. Just stop it. Or don't do it. I forgot the exact words he used. I think just stop it, because sometimes we keep doing things over and over again. And if we just stop it, just think what the difference that can make. And so I want to thank everybody who's attending here today. And I want to thank everyone who's ever attended. Because each of you are a gift to this center and a gift to the world. Whether you're here physically, whether you're here, say on the phone, or you're here through the technology that we have today on Zoom or Facebook. Those were all created by imagination, by creativity. 10 years ago, we wouldn't be doing this. So I give thanks for each of you, however you tapped in today and however you tap in every day. And I give thanks for anyone that's ever contributed to keep us moving forward in our imagination for our higher good. I love that part of the life work, to ask ourselves, is our imagination running to or running from our greater good? I think that's what it was. Our highest good, greater good, highest good. Oh, good, period, whatever. So asking ourselves that, am I going basically forward or backwards in life? And then we can do a course correction. So I give thanks for the learnings and the teachings of this teaching and of the individuals that move this teaching forward. And so, if anyone would like to contribute, you can always go to our website, which is northernlightspiritualcenter.com, and hit the donate button. And we would greatly appreciate whatever you have to give. And we will be back next week, same time, same station. And just want to thank you all. And I raise you, and I praise you in the name of love.